Hello YouTube and welcome to Prime Productions. I'm here to help enhance your tabletop gaming experience. If you're new to this channel, I primarily cover Paizo tabletop role-playing games like Pathfinder and Starfinder. So last year, 2024, we got a lot of content from Paizo. Player Core 2, Monster Core, Howl of the Wild, War of Immortals, Divine Mysteries, plus 2 Pathfinder class playtests, and of course the Starfinder playtest with 6 new classes and several new ancestries. So we are not hurting for content. I didn't even mention everything like the Tianjia guides or the adventure paths. But there's always wishing for more, so I thought I'd take a second here in the new year to talk about some things I'd like to see coming out of Paizo in the year 2025. Just to be clear, this is just stuff I would like to see personally. This isn't anything the system needs from like a meta perspective. This is just stuff I personally would like to see. Oh, and this list also won't include stuff Paizo has already said will come out, like the Starfinder 2nd Edition. That's already coming out. I don't need to put that on the list. Now, before we get started, I have 2 honorable mentions for the list. The first is not something I want from Paizo directly. See what's on screen right now? This is an old video game called Dungeon Hack. I have fond memories of this game. I used to play it all the time at my friend's house back when I was a kid. It's what's called a roguelike, depending on your definition of roguelike, that is. Basically, you make a character, in this case a Dungeons & Dragons 2nd Edition character, and then you just explore a randomly created dungeon. There are locks and keys and random treasure. What makes it different from something like Diablo is that it is slower paced and has a large emphasis on RPG mechanics. It's more of an RPG than an action-adventure game is what I'm saying. Anyway, roguelikes and such video games are fun, and I wish there was something like that for Pathfinder 2nd Edition. There kind of was in Pathfinder 1st Edition. Both of the Owlcat games, Kingmaker and Wrath of the Righteous, had random dungeon modes, but I'd like to see something in Pathfinder 2. And while there are some Pathfinder 2 video games in the works, none of them look like we will get Pathfinder rules in a randomly created dungeon. It looks like BKOM Studios' Abomination Vaults is going to be more of a Diablo-like game instead of following the traditional rules of Pathfinder, and the Dragon's Demand video game by Ossian Studios looks like it probably won't have a randomly created dungeon mode. No offense to Ossian Studios, they are a pretty small group. I just don't think that they'll have the time to program that on the side. Still, it would be nice to see. The second honorable mention is pretty niche, but it would be nice to see some sort of support for sling users. Some feats, maybe an archetype, maybe a class archetype for gunslinger that replaces their firearm and crossbow specialization with slings. Slings were hugely important during history, particularly in the Bronze Age and up through Roman times. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of support for them in the game, and they are just kind of suboptimal compared to other options like the crossbow. It'd be good to see a sling as a viable option for some sort of build. Luckily, a friend of the channel pointed me to a Paizo writer who said we should be getting some support for sling users in 2025, so look forward to seeing that. So, first thing on my actual list, or number 5 I guess, I'd like to see some Ancestry feats fleshed out. Just getting in there and giving some of the other ancestries enough love that there are at least 3 to 4 feats per ancestry feat level would go a long way, I think. That'd just be nice to see. It's a pretty simple request, not much to say about it. Moving on. Number 4 on the list, I'd like to see some more complete rules for monster and NPC creation. When Pathfinder 2e first came out, there was a web supplement that talked about how to make monsters and NPCs, and it was kinda sort of expanded upon in GM Core, but it's kinda bare bones. I mean, I shouldn't say that. It is several pages long, but it basically only covers normal monster creation and only kinda sort of explains how to make NPCs from the 16 classes in Player Core 1 and 2. I would just like to see some rules on creating more esoteric NPCs like Maguses, or guidelines for making swarms or troops. As of the writing of the script, there are only stats for 15 troops in the entire game, and troops are awesome. I'd love to have some go-to existing ground rules for making those creatures. Sure, we can guess at making them or look up existing monsters and do some reverse engineering, but it would be nice to have an official guide. Now, I realize I'm in the minority in this, most people won't care, but having made third-party content with custom NPCs before, cough, subtle plug cough, I would appreciate more guidance. Hopefully the upcoming NPC core that they teased last year will have some rules on enemy monster creation. Number 3 on the list, I'd love to see some new class archetypes. I think class archetypes could be used to bring back some of the hybrid classes from Pathfinder 1 that people love. The Brawler could be a monk class archetype that gets armor. The Ninja could be a rogue class archetype that gets chi spells. Samurai could be a ranger archetype. I'm just spitballing here. Now, I know we got a few of those in War of Immortals, like the Avenger standing in for the Slayer and the Vindicator standing in for the Inquisitor, but I'd like to see more. In particular, I'd love to see fighter class archetypes. We got the Divisive Warrior of Legend in War of Immortals, but there's a lot of room in this design space. Because fighters don't have a class path or subclass or whatever you want to call it, they can kind of feel a bit samey compared to other classes. Class archetypes are a great way to alleviate that. Like, does anyone remember the Sohei Monk from Pathfinder 1st Edition or the Weapon Master from Dungeons & Dragons 3.0? These were characters that trained so much with their weapons that they could channel their spiritual energy, their ki, through their weapons. I think there's room for that as a class archetype for fighter, and yes, I know you can get chi feats from monk or Path of Perfection archetype, but those are kind of predicated on fighting unarmed, and the way archetypes work, going into monk to get monk focus spells would mean being greatly delayed in getting those spells. Another idea for fighter class archetype is something like the Psi Warrior from D&D. Again, I'm looking something specific to the fighter, not just like dipping into psychic to get a few spells, but something where psychic powers are merged into fighting. I don't know, that's just what I would like to see. For number 2 on the list, I'd like to see a new cleric subclass called a Doctrine. Since the start of the game, there have only ever been 2 Doctrines, and I'd like to have some other options. We kinda sorta got a 3rd Doctrine with the highly divisive Battle Harbinger, but other than that? In particular, how about a Sacred Fist Doctrine, which existed in Pathfinder 1st Edition and even in Dungeons & Dragons 3.0 and 3.5. This would be a cleric who's good at fighting unarmed and unarmored. I actually homebrewed my own Sacred Fist Doctrine that I think came out pretty well, so I don't think it would be too hard. I called it something else, but essentially it was a Sacred Fist, and I think it works. So yeah, I think it's possible to get another cleric subclass. And number 1 on this list, the return of the Shifter class. So for those who don't know, the Shifter was a Pathfinder 1st Edition class, the last class released, I believe. It was sort of like a martial druid. They didn't really get spell slots, but they could shift parts of their body, eventually their whole body, into different animals for combat benefits. Talons of a bird to scratch people, that sort of thing. They were kind of like asking, what if you took druid, kept all the change into animals bits, and then traded out the spells for more martial combat? And there's a lot of people who would like to see that particular power fantasy return. Plus, there are tons of pop culture characters whose only power is shapeshifting into animal combat forms. Characters like Beast Boy from Detective Comics, Nimona, heck, even the Wildcrats all kind of have this power set. Now, I know what you're going to say. The Untamed Druid has a focus spell that does that, and any primal caster can cast animal form or avian form or dragon form and do that, and that's all true. But Untamed Druids are not going to be doing great in martial combat, and animal form and the like are spells with some built-in limitations, like only being able to do it a few times a day, and it also basically wastes your first round of combat. I'm thinking something like a monk where you can shift between different stances that embody different animals or different parts of animals. I know a lot of people would be excited about that particular power set. Maybe it would be its own class, maybe a monk class archetype, I don't know, but it would be great to see. And that's my personal top 5 things I'd like to see in Pathfinder 2e for the year 2025. Is there something you want that I didn't get to? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, remember to like and subscribe. That tells not only me, but also YouTube that you like this kind of content and would like to see more. And until next time, thank you, good luck, and happy gaming!